Hey, Paul, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this video stroke analysis lesson for you on your one-handed backhand. Now, I'm super excited to do this, but what I want to show you first was kind of the question you had about the grip. Let's actually take a look at the grip because your grip is pretty good. And I don't mind the fact that your thumb is up the shaft rather than wrapped around. And I really don't mind this thumb. This is a common thing that players, they feel more stable when they do it. But to be honest, I'm good with it. Look, here's what we want to know. We want to know where is the base knuckle of the index finger and the heel pad. And we can't see the heel pad, but we can see that you have a trigger finger so that we know that the heel pad is right here. And this is really where the racket is. So your knuckle and heel pad have to both be on number one. One thing, it looks good. I mean, we've got the ridge right here for panel number one. And if we extend that ridge like this, you can see that your base knuckle is right in there. So I'm super happy with your grip. I don't think there is any need for you to wrap your hand around. I once heard Vic Braden talk about a Wimbledon champion who held the racket like this. And though that may be an exception, once I heard that, I said, you know what? Then I'm not going to, because I used to harp on this all the time with students. But once he said, hey, as long as the knuckle and heel pad are where they need to be, it's okay. So once I heard the master say that, then I was good. So I think there is no issue whatsoever with your grip. If you want to try with the thumb around, that's fine. If you just want to keep it like this, that is fine as well. As long as you have the knuckle and your heel pad staying where they are, and the knuckle looks really great for an Eastern backhand grip, then I think you're just fine. All right, Paul, here are your areas for improvement when it comes to your one-handed backhand. I'm going to show you all these ideas on, a side-by-side comparison of you versus the pros as we go along here. But let's get right to it on the laundry list here. We've got the late preparation. First and foremost, this is really a main issue that probably stems from when you were a beginner. I've been teaching tennis for 26 years. And one thing you know about beginners, and if you're a coach, is you know that they prepare super late. They wait for the ball to get to them, and then they prepare their racket behind them. Or they'll use the bounce to tell them when to prepare the racket, which is actually what you do. You wait for the ball to bounce, and then you prepare the racket. So let's say your opponent on the other side of the court hits the ball to you, and it's going to land on your baseline. You don't prepare your racket until your ball bounces or until just before it bounces. Even though while the ball was traveling that whole time, you knew it was a backhand. Your brain waits for the bounce to know, finally, I can prepare the racket. And you can see the issue: depth, pace, somebody hitting with spin and the ball skids or like almost seems to accelerate off of a topspin ball when it bounces, almost like feels like it jumps off a trampoline. All of these things are going to give you reduced time after the bounce, and you're going to feel rushed. You probably struggle taking balls on the rise on your backhand. Again, that requires early preparation to be able to take it on the rise. So we're going to talk about that. Number two, you are letting go with your right hand during the drop. Many players are surprised to hear that the one-handed backhand, Paul, is more two-handed than one-handed. I want you to hold on with your right hand so much longer. And I'm going to show you some pros who do this as well. This actually causes you to open up in the finish, and I'll show you the correlation. But one of the reasons you struggle staying sideways on your backhand, which allows the racket to track out towards your target and swing low to high, all these things, it actually is caused by you letting go too early with your right hand. So I'll show you that. Number three, you have an open racket face prior to contact. This is an absolute killer to consistency. You've probably noticed that when you hit the ball, you hit a lot of side spin. You kind of have to swing flat into the ball and across. You get a lot of pace, like you can crush the backhand. But sometimes the ball just shoots out and hits the back fence. Sometimes it goes and buries itself in the net. And then other times you hit a perfect shot. You're like, man, why can't I do that every time? It is simply because you have an open racket face before you hit the ball, which means your strings are facing up. And that forces you to roll your racket through contact. And if you don't roll the racket, which means your strings go from facing up to facing down as you hit the ball, then the ball is guaranteed to go out. So rolling is necessary for you because your racket face is open. So I'll show you that. Number four, which is related to number three, your racket isn't dropping below the ball. You take your racket back high, late, but high. It begins to drop, but then you drop to the level of contact and you swing straight across, giving you side spin, giving you the need to crush the ball, because if you don't crush it, it's going to go in the net. So I'm going to show you how 3 and 4 are actually related. And then number 5 is also related. You swing very much across, your finish goes down low, and you really don't get topspin. What we want to do is swing up. Like, we want that racket to go way up in the air. But you can only do that if you close the racket face. So I'm super excited, and let's get to it. All right, Paul, number 1, the late racket prep. You are using the bounce to tell you when to prepare the racket. Let's look at it from the back view here. We can see the ball come out of the ball machine, so the ball is on its way, right? I want you to notice where your racket goes initially. You can see your racket is down low by your right pocket. And I believe, where's the ball? Oh yeah, look at the ball. The ball is dropping, and then check this out. The ball bounced right there. So the ball has bounced. It's gone from the baseline to the middle of no man's land. Now, that's probably about 70 feet. I mean, from the baseline to this service line is 60 feet, 39 plus 21. And so the ball is traveled probably about 68 feet, 70 feet maybe. And look where your racket is still. Now that the ball is bouncing, then you prepare your racket and you get your racket up. So what your brain is doing is waiting for the ball to bounce. And then when it bounces, it says, oh, now it's time to prepare your racket. What you have to learn is to get your racket back here before the ball crosses the net. The moment the ball comes out of the ball machine, you know that it's a backhand. In fact, on a ball machine, you know it's a backhand because it's not a person. Like, you're making a video of you hitting backhand. So of course you know it's a backhand. So you know it's a backhand and you're waiting for the ball to bounce, then you prepare. Here it is from the side view. Here comes the bounce. Let's see right there. So check this out. Here's the bounce right there. And look where your racket is. Now you prepare the racket. But you prepare the racket, and here's the ball. The ball's already on its way, like to you after the bounce. When the ball is on your opponent's side of the net, which, can I move over here? Okay, great. So when the ball is right here, your racket should already be back there. This is great. Like, everything's pretty good here, okay? You have to learn to get your racket to that position before the ball ever crosses the net. Is that a bit of an exaggeration? Sure. But so is a cast on your arm if it's broken. So are braces on teeth when you're trying to straighten them. Sometimes you have to exaggerate the correction in order to mold the body into what you actually want. Nobody suggests that we should have a cast on our arm our entire lives. But if it's broken, we put a cast on in order to fix it or help it heal. It's the exact same thing. This is what I would recommend, is I would recommend hitting backhands where you start like this. The ball has not even shot out of the ball machine on its way to you, and you're already prepared like this. Your racket is behind you. And I'm going to show you exactly the way I want it to be. But just getting it back there will give you the feeling of what it's like to be prepared. Remember, you're waiting for the ball to bounce and then you're preparing the racket. So what happens if the ball lands on the baseline? You'll look like this with your racket down here while the ball is on the baseline. And now the ball only has a couple feet to get to you, and you've got a quick swing, and it's like it's this big rush because you've kind of honestly squandered the time you actually had before the ball bounced, and now you're rushing and doing everything after the bounce. I have 11 and 9-year-old, and I'm like, look, the teacher doesn't spring a test on you. On Monday, they'll say there's a test on Friday, so you don't wait until Thursday night to start studying. You study Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, like you study the whole time. As soon as you're given the assignment of a ball coming out of a ball machine, Having your racket here is of no use because you're just going to go there anyway. Watch your racket. It just goes to there anyway. So dropping the racket to there to go to there is not helping you. You should immediately go to that point. And my goal for you, Paul, though it might be a bit of an exaggeration at the moment, that's a good thing. I want you to get to here before it even crosses the net when you're actually playing. And the way to do that is to actually start with it here in a ball machine session where you never have a ready position. You hit the ball and you immediately, almost like a baseball batter with the bat over their shoulder, you have the racket all the way behind you. Now, this is what I will say. I have seen people, Paul, who put their racket right here. The ball is shot out of the ball machine. And you know what they do? They drop their racket to where it always is, and they have no idea they do it. Then, when the ball bounces, they lift it back up to that point again. They look at it, and I've seen people look at this. They go, I had no idea. They're like, how can I be so ridiculous and do something so silly? I'm like, look, the human body and the human brain, it's a computer. It likes to do what it's used to doing. Your body is used to the ball bouncing with your racket down here. So don't be surprised if you start up here, that position right there, when the ball comes out of the ball machine, your racket quick drops to here. Don't be surprised if that happens. I just want you to not beat yourself up for it. Just say, nope, I am keeping my racket dead still behind me. And then when the ball bounces and it rises up, then I drop and swing. I want you, sorry, I hit my wedding ring against the table right here. Sorry, that was that bang. That's the feeling I want you to have. I want you to feel what it's like to have a lot of time. Once you feel what it's like to have a lot of time, you'll see how you're more capable than you think you are in handling depth, speed, and spin from your opponent. Now, in addition to preparing early, we also want to make sure that we prepare correctly. So I've got Lorenzo Musetti here. I made him left-handed so that I could compare you side by side with him. But I want to compare this position to your position. When you finally do take your racket back, you take it back in a very common way. And that is the racket, we'll take this view right here. Your racket is wide open. Strings are facing up, and you'll notice that your elbow is below, your right elbow is below your right hand. When we look at Musetti, his racket is perfectly vertical. I mean, you could balance a coin on the top edge of the racket right here. And from his hand to his elbow, his right hand to his right elbow, is straight across. If I wanted you to be like Lorenzo, which I want you to, I would have to reach through the screen, right? I would have to raise your elbow just like this, which in turn takes the racket from open about 45 degrees to straight up and down. The way you take your racket back matters, not just if you prepare early. You don't want to prepare early but incorrectly, right, or inefficiently. So we want our racket, when we take it back, to be straight up and down. That's going to help us to close the racket face, drop below the ball, get consistent topspin. Because your racket face is open, it really sets into motion some real issues later on. It kind of causes, right, any swing is very much a trickle-down system. It's like a domino effect system. So if you do something that's inefficient, boy, it is early, it shows up later and later, and you keep having to fix issues earlier in the swing, and it just complicates the swing. So this is what we're looking for. The racket straight up and down when you take it back, and you're going to do that by making sure that your back elbow is up. You basically want a perpendicular relationship between the racket and the forearm. Film yourself and prepare the racket before the ball ever comes out of the ball machine with your racket in that vertical position with that high back elbow. Now, the second idea, Paul, is you are letting go too early with your right hand during the drop. The one-handed backhand is more two-handed than you think. For instance, let's take Dominic Thiem. And by the way, you'll notice that his racket is a little bit open, right? Racket's a little bit open. That's why I didn't show you him with the Musetti position. You really, when looking at pros, have to kind of Frankenstein the perfect swing, right? I'm willing to bet there are people in your life who are really physically fit, but they're not like the nicest person. And then there's the really nice person, but they really need to change their diet a little bit. And then you got one person who's amazing at business, but, like their family relationships aren't that great. And then you got the really great person who's amazing at their family life, but then their business, they're not too great at that. Look, no person is perfect. No technique is perfect on the Pro Tour. If you're looking to copy technique, you actually have to Frankenstein it from a bunch of different pros to get each aspect to be what you want when it comes to hitting the most efficient backhand. So what we can copy from Team that is going to be in your best interest is how long he keeps his right hand on the racket. Check this out. Watch how he drops, and you can see his right hand on the racket. Watch how he drops, and right hand is still on. Right hand is still on. His right hand just lets go right now. Now, if we draw his body, and then we draw with a yellow circle his right hand, notice where the circle is in relation to the green lines, right? His body. Now we look at your swing and we draw the green lines and look where your hand is. You are letting go and dropping the hand behind you. When Team lets go, like at no time can I put a circle back here and have his hand go in that circle the way it is for you. He is bringing that right hand in front, where what you're trying to do is keep it in back by letting go during the drop. Believe it or not, what you are doing is actually the leading cause for players to open up too early. When you're done hitting your backhand, you finish completely open. In fact, your right hand, see how your right hand swings forward? Your right hand kind of looks like you're hitting a forehand right now. It's swinging forward. Where you see Team and his right hand comes back, like his right hand is coming back toward the camera. The reason is because the right hand, Paul, should drop, go forward, and then back. What yours is doing is it's dropping and trying to stay back, and it will always get yanked forward. Watch his hand. It goes down, comes forward, and then comes back. Yours tries to stay back, and then it gets yanked around. That leads to opening up the body, getting pure side spin, it's difficult to hit your targets precisely because your swing is going around like a merry-go-round rather than a swing that's more Ferris wheel-like, high, low, high. So what you're going to have to think of, and I call this hitting a 1.5-hander. Paul, I want you to think that your right hand is going to stay on for so long that you are going to hit the ball with your right hand still on the racket. I actually want you in your mind to swear every so often. You're like, you know what? I swear that my right hand on these last couple backhands were kind of still on the racket. Right? It's like, did I let go soon enough? I don't know. I might have just hit a 2-handed backhand, or what I call a 1.5-hander. Like you still have half your hand still on the racket, like a couple fingers still touching the racket. Because that's what you see with Team. He looks right. If you didn't know any better, you would think, wait, is he ever going to let go with his right hand? And then just before he hits, he lets go. You let go. You've already let go at this point because here is the throat of the racket. For your racket, your right hand has already let go. You've let go at this point where we can see that his hand is still on and still on, still on, still on, still on. In fact, we can know, like your right hand is just letting go now. Let's put a little timer. Let's see how much longer in actual amount of time his hand is on. I would say it's letting go right about there, where it's definitely letting go there. So let's say right there, 0.16 seconds longer. Now, that's because of the speed of his swing, but you could think of it as the distance rather than just even the time. There's so much longer that he is keeping that hand on. When your right hand goes forward, then it's actually able to go back. It's actually a counterweight. you're not able to do your counterweight because you're letting go. You're dropping this hand behind you super early. So that's done. And now that energy is dissipated. And now the swing occurs and your right hand is no match for it. And your right hand swings around. And you actually finish with your right hand in front, where he's finishing reaching back with his right hand. So I want you to keep your right hand on for so much longer than you currently are. And the difference it is going to make is going to be felt immediately. Now, the second idea, Paul, is you are letting go too early with your right hand during the drop. The one-handed backhand is more two-handed than you think. For instance, let's take Dominic Thiem. And by the way, you'll notice that his racket is a little bit open, right? Racket's a little bit open. That's why I didn't show you him with the Musetti position. You really, when looking at pros, have to kind of Frankenstein the perfect swing, right? I'm willing to bet there are people in your life who are really physically fit, but they're not like the nicest person. And then there's the really nice person, but they really need to change their diet a little bit. And then you got one person who's amazing at business, but, like their family relationships aren't that great. And then you got the really great person who's amazing at their family life, but then their business, they're not too great at that. Look, no person is perfect. No technique is perfect on the Pro Tour. If you're looking to copy technique, you actually have to Frankenstein it from a bunch of different pros to get each aspect to be what you want when it comes to hitting the most efficient backhand. So what we can copy from Thiem that is going to be in your best interest is how long he keeps his right hand on the racket. Check this out. Watch how he drops, and you can see his right hand on the racket. Watch how he drops, and right hand is still on. Right hand is still on. His right hand just lets go right now. Now, if we draw his body, and then we draw with a yellow circle his right hand, notice where the circle is in relation to the green lines, right? His body. Now we look at your swing and we draw the green lines and look where your hand is. You are letting go and dropping the hand behind you. When Thiem lets go, like at no time can I put a circle back here and have his hand go in that circle the way it is for you. He is bringing that right hand in front, where what you're trying to do is keep it in back by letting go during the drop. Believe it or not, what you are doing is actually the leading cause for players to open up too early. When you're done hitting your backhand, you finish completely open. In fact, your right hand, see how your right hand swings forward? Your right hand kind of looks like you're hitting a forehand right now. It's swinging forward. Where you see Thiem and his right hand comes back, like his right hand is coming back toward the camera. The reason is because the right hand, Paul, should drop, go forward, and then back. What yours is doing is it's dropping and trying to stay back, and it will always get yanked forward. Watch his hand. It goes down, comes forward, and then comes back. Yours tries to stay back, and then it gets yanked around. That leads to opening up the body, getting pure side spin, it's difficult to hit your targets precisely because your swing is going around like a merry-go-round rather than a swing that's more Ferris wheel-like, high, low, high. So what you're going to have to think of, and I call this hitting a 1.5-hander. Paul, I want you to think that your right hand is going to stay on for so long that you are going to hit the ball with your right hand still on the racket. I actually want you in your mind to swear every so often. You're like, you know what? I swear that my right hand on these last couple backhands were kind of still on the racket. right? It's like, oh, did I let go or soon enough? I don't know. I might have just hit a two-handed backhand, or what I call a 1.5-hander. Like you still have half your hand still on the racket, like a couple fingers still touching the racket. Because that's what you see with Team. He looks right. If you didn't know any better, you would think, wait, is he ever going to let go with his right hand? And then just before he hits, he lets go. You let go. You've already let go at this point, because here is the throat of the racket. For your racket, your right hand is already let go. You've let go at this point, where we can see that his hand is still on and still on, still on, still on, still on. In fact, we can know, like, your right hand is just letting go now. Let's put a little timer. Let's see how much longer in actual amount of time his hand is on. I would say it's letting go right about there, where it's definitely letting go there. So let's say right there, 0.16 seconds longer. Now, that's because of the speed of his swing, but you could think of it as the distance rather than just even the time. There's so much longer that he is keeping that hand on. When your right hand goes forward, then it's actually able to go back. It's actually a counterweight. You're not able to do your counterweight because you're letting go. You're dropping this hand behind you super early. So that's done. And now that energy is dissipated. And now the swing occurs and your right hand is no match for it. And your right hand swings around. And you actually finish with your right hand in front, where he's finishing reaching back with his right hand. So I want you to keep your right hand on for so much longer than you currently are. And the difference it is going to make is going to be felt immediately. Here's a great view of it as well. So here's a left-handed Team. I want you to look where his right hand is, and I want you to look where it goes during the backhand. So at contact, his right hand has come to his groin. His right hand has come forward in front of his body, and now watch his hand go back. The right hand has to go forward to contact, then it goes back. Watch your right hand. Your right hand, here are your hips, right? Your right hand doesn't go to the groin and then go back. Watch where your right hand lets go, and you try to keep it behind you. Your right hand, that's what we saw from the back view. Your right hand is trying to go behind you, and that's why it always swings forward, where Team is doing everything he can to swing it back. It's an accelerant. I wouldn't even tell you that you should copy like this forward position. I don't want you to be forward like Team. So staying sideways is not something that Team does very well. So I'm not going to talk about that, even though I just did. Because I want to talk about the obvious. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. He's facing forward like you, but he could improve his backhand. Like all the pros, they could all, just like all of us in our lives, we could all improve certain aspects of our lives. The pros could all improve certain aspects of their technique to be better. And just like their mental toughness and their footwork and their strategy, they're not perfect. So they make mistakes for some reason, so they can all improve. They have coaches for a reason. But getting this arm to go back, the key to getting it to go back as a counterweight is actually to bring it forward rather than letting go during the drop and then trying to keep it behind you. Then it just gets yanked forward. We want this hand to go back, and bringing it forward is the key to do that. By the way, here's a great example of this from Chapo. So watch Dennis drop with his right hand on the throat of the racket, and look how it comes forward. So there's, from the side view, there's his hand in front of his groin. Now watch his hand go back. See, it goes backward. The right hand goes forward to contact, then goes backward. You can see he does a better job than compared to Team of keeping that body to the side. Helps swing the racket up and out through contact towards your target, makes you more consistent, accurate, all the above. All right, let's talk about the next idea. Your racket face is actually open prior to hitting the ball. Now, we can't see it very well because of how blurry the racket is. But we know based on the swing, right? So it's a bit of like circumstantial evidence here. You are rolling the racket through contact with your strings when you're done facing down. And if the ball goes over the net, then we know the racket was open prior to hitting the ball, especially because you're hitting so flat. And so if you were to film yourself on a nice, bright, sunny day with a lot of sunlight, the video would be very clear, kind of like it's very clear for Dennis, but it's blurry for you. But let me show you kind of on the screen here what your racket actually is. Your racket right now is straight up and down. You could put a coin on the edge. That means if you swung up low to high, the way Dennis is here, your ball would hit the white against the wall. So what you have learned to do is to swing across. This is why if somebody were to stand to your left as you're hitting a backhand, you would crack them in the shoulder. Where if you're going to stand next to Dennis, to his left, when he's done, he finishes up above. You can see his hand is so much higher than his head when he's done. Where when you're done on your backhand, your hand rarely gets higher than your shoulder. This is not the finish's fault. You getting side spin is not side spin's fault. Whenever there's an issue going on with the swing, you have to go earlier in the swing to figure out what's going on. This is what you need to make sure of. This position right here. Look how his racket is closed. His strings are tilted down. When Dennis drops the racket, he is closing the racket face, which is why I want your racket to be straight up and down like Musetti, which is why I want you to drop the racket with both hands, with that right hand on. The reason is because this position is so much more easily attained when you turn early with a vertical racket and you drop the racket down with both hands. The right hand on the racket helps to tilt the strings down. When your strings tilt down prior to hitting the ball, then what you get to do is swing low to high for topspin. Now, when I say low to high, there's a reason. We want to drop the racket down below contact, but you cannot drop down below contact because backhand after backhand, your racket is, we could again put a coin on the edge of the racket right there. So then you end up swinging down and across, and you can see there is your arm and your hand not higher than head level. I want you to finish way up in the air. That is only possible if you close the racket face, and then you can swing low to high as you brush the ball. Here's a good view of it too. Your strings are slightly up. Now, let's talk about the fourth idea, dropping the racket down below the ball. Because you are going to be closing the racket face, now I want your racket to be lower. So let's look at team, and let's draw a line straight across contact. So that's the level of contact. I want you to look how everything is below that line. His hitting hand, his non-hitting hand, the entire racket is below that line. Everything is below that line. If we look at your contact, which is right there, so there's the level of contact. Watch how you drop the racket to that yellow line and your hand does not get below that line and you swing straight across. You smack into the back. This is one of the reasons why you are able to crush your backhand. I'm willing to bet when you step out onto the court, you have one of the harder backhands on the court, no matter who you're hitting with. You know that you can absolutely obliterate a backhand. You can crush it. You can hit it through people if you're playing doubles and there are some people at the net. You can hit it down the middle really hard. Power is certainly not an issue for you when it comes to your one-hander. And the reason is because such a high percentage of your racket speed is allocated into the forward flatness of your hit. What you see with team is look how far below the line his racket head is. And then he swings up. Now, what's interesting is when we watch your swing here, I want you to watch how your racket wraps around and then goes up. Watch this. It wraps around and then it goes up. See that? Pretty interesting. You smack around and then you go up. There would be no reason, no logical reason for your racket to go up from a biomechanics standpoint after you've hit the ball, except if you know that the racket should be up there. I'm willing to bet that you have been trying to finish high, or you're doing everything you can to finish high. You've maybe seen videos of mine, which on YouTube, which I appreciate if you've ever seen any of my YouTube videos, or any of the other great coaches out there who have talked about, and you watch the pros and they finish high on their one-handed backhand. So your brain swings flat into the back because your racket face is open, so you have to roll as you hit the ball. And you can't drop below the ball and swing up. The ball would go out every time and sail over the fence. So you're swinging around your body. This is a merry-go-round swing, swinging like a hula hoop around your body. And then your brain goes, wait, whoops, let's finish high. That's the only logical reason why your racket would go up there. It's not because of the actual swing itself. So when you watch Team, he just goes up right away. After contact, he goes up. That's because he closes the racket face prior to hitting the ball, and he's swinging up as he hits. Because if you're below something, you've got to go up to contact. By the way, look how his top edge is slightly in front of his bottom edge. His racket face is probably 2 degrees closed here. The racket face is ever so slightly closed, but he's swinging low to high as he hits the ball, and that's what imparts the topspin, lifting that ball over the net. If you want to have that high finish up here be actually natural, if this is the level of contact, you have to drop down below contact with both hands, closing the racket face, then swing up and naturally to that high point, rather than swinging to the level of the ball, straight across and around, and then having to manufacture that upward swing. You are simply missing closing the racket face down below contact and assist with your right hand to make that happen. That's what's going to allow you to get the topspin that you want. That's going to give you the consistency and the improvement that you're looking for. So now let's talk about the finish. I've got Chapo here again. And I want you to look at your racket position when you're done. And we're going to use the letter V in order to understand this. If I use your racket to help assist me in drawing the letter V, you would see that you have the left side of the letter V. If you look at Chapo and you use his racket to draw a letter V, you will see that he has the right side. Let me use a different color so you can actually see it. He has the right side of the letter V. This is very easy to understand. Your racket face is typically, not always, because some of the pros break these rules, and this is not a rule I want you to break, but sometimes the pros break the rules. But Stan Wawrinka, he's a world-class, one of the best backhands of all time. He can get away with stuff that normal people like us cannot get away with. But simply stated, your racket face, Paul, will be different before contact versus after contact. Let me explain. Prior to hitting the ball, where are his strings pointing? Shapovalov's. His strings are pointing down, right? If his racket were a mirror, he'd be reflecting the ground like right there, right? The mirror would be reflecting right there. So his strings are pointing down prior to hitting the ball. So guess on this backhand where his strings point when he's done. His strings point up. His strings are going from facing down to then facing forward as he hits the ball and then facing up. You have the opposite. You have your strings prior to contact facing up. You then have to roll the racket, or what people think of rolling over the ball for topspin, which is impossible, by the way, because the ball's not on the strings long enough to even change the angle of the racket face 1 degree while the racket is rotating and while the ball is on the strings. The ball's on the strings for 0.004 seconds. That is how long the ball is touching the strings. 4 thousandths of a second, 4 milliseconds, is how long the ball, like people think the ball, and you'll hear it from coaches, well-known coaches will say, oh, when you swing, keep the ball on your strings longer. Just, they might not actually mean that, and I hope they don't mean that because it's impossible. I don't care what you do, the ball is on the strings for 4 milliseconds. But the idea is this, you cannot roll the racket and change the racket face angle in 4 thousandths of a second. So what ends up happening is you just hope to time it so that your strings point forward when you strike the ball, because your strings are going from facing up to facing down. Because look where your racket is after you hit the ball. Your strings right now are facing down. So you are doing the opposite of Chapo. Your strings face up prior to hitting the ball. to then facing down after. His strings are facing down prior to hitting the ball and then facing up after. Now, you might think, well, what's the difference? The difference is when you are going from open racket face to closed, it produces a rolling effect of the forearm, which reduces the length of time your strings point towards your target. It doesn't reduce how long the ball is on the strings. It just gives you a shorter hitting zone. A hitting zone is how long your strings face forward during the time when you're striking the ball or wanting to strike the ball. Here's a great view of it from the side again. Look at your strings. Strings are open. And then watch how you have to roll the racket, and now your strings are pointing down. This is why you feel that you have to sometimes swing down and across as you're hitting the ball. Because before you hit, right now, your strings are facing open, like that. And then you roll them, and now they're facing down. So you're trying to time it when you make that roll. And it really reduces how long the strings point forward. So if you're a little late with this roll, the ball goes shooting out. If you're early with this roll, the ball dumps into the net. If it's perfect, it goes right in. You're thinking, man, why can't I do this every time? It's simply because your racket face is not closing down below the ball, forcing you to swing across. Now, does Shapovalov finish like this every time? Absolutely not. Not even close. In fact, I would say this is the exception to the rule, or the exception to how he normally finishes. If I go earlier on in the swing here, like here, a little bit. Let's see later on. Yeah, like this. You can see the racket's actually to the left of his hand. He's almost using like the left side of the letter V. The pros will use, and all pros will use this type of swing. You can see his body is to the side. His right hand is back behind him. He's got the right side of the letter V. Pros use this finish when they are looking for more control. Notice the ball that came to him right now. He is hitting an on-the-rise ball. By the way, notice he's not waiting for the ball to bounce. His racket, by the time the ball bounces, is all the way behind him. Racket face closed. He is hitting an on-the-rise ball. On the rise is not easy, even for pros, right? The pros miss. The pros double fault. Like tennis is hard for everyone. So pros, return of serve, down the line passing shots, when they don't have a lot of time with a really deep ball or on the rise, they will use this finish as a way of gaining control. The reason it gains control is because it minimizes the use of the wrist and the forearm. This angle between the arm and the racket, that angle shows up in the finish. That is the exact same angle. It's the same angle. He is not using any wrist. He's not using any forearm. He is simply swinging low to high. There's a ton of topspin on this ball. Why? Because he closed the racket face below contact and swung up. But you've got to learn to finish with your hand higher than head level with the racket staying to the right of your hand. But that is only possible if you close your racket face down below contact. All right, Paul. So here are your topspin backhand solutions. Number one, prepare the racket before the ball crosses the net. I want your racket all the way back behind you. And if you need to, have it waiting back there, almost like a baseball batter. Have your racket all the way back before the ball even comes out of the ball machine so that you can not stress out about when to take it back. Just have it all the way back. Feel what it's like to prepare super early. It's always better to be early than to be late. Number two, same thing when it comes to the backswing, or the same concept here is we don't just want to prepare the racket. We want to prepare it properly. So have a high back elbow with a vertical racket. You want that racket vertical. Just think Musetti. Yes. Do you always see that in pros? Absolutely not. But there are a lot of people there are a lot of things that a lot of people do in all walks of life that you don't want to copy, right? So just because someone's super successful, I always like to say, just because someone's rich doesn't mean they're really good with money, right? I'm telling you, there are people on the pro tour, there are high-level club players who are good in spite of the technique that they use. They'd be even better if they had different technique. So have that racket straight up and down, that high back elbow, and it's going to help you to close the racket face later on. Number three, drop the racket below contact. So you want to drop down kind of like by your right knee. Drop the racket down with your right hand on. Just get the feeling that the drop is two-handed, because it is. The drop is two-handed. Number 4, use the right hand while you're dropping the racket to assist you in closing the face. When you let go with your right hand early, Paul, it is hurting your ability to close the face of the racket. So by keeping your right hand on, it is going to help serve you to swing it towards your groin and then go back to help you stay sideways as you hit the ball. But it also can be used to actually tilt the strings down and close the racket face. The racket face should close at about 45 degrees. So you don't want the strings facing straight at the ground. You don't want the racket straight on its edge, holding a coin on the edge. You want it tilted at 45 degrees. Just think about when I drew that yellow circle showing the reflection of the mirror for Shapovalov, and his racket face was closed at about 45 degrees. That's what you want. Drop the racket down below contact with a closed racket face. That is going to allow you to swing low to high to hit the ball. Now, number 5, I want you to almost hit with both hands. This is that idea of hitting a two-handed one-hander or a 1.5 one-hander. I want you holding on for so long that not only do you hold on with your right hand as the racket drops, Paul, closing your racket face, I want the right hand to kind of come forward a little bit with the racket. Again, if you film yourself from the side, your hand should get to your groin before that right hand begins going back. Your number 6, you're going to pull the right hand back after contact. And that's when you watch the pros. The best one-handers will have their right hand come forward to contact, if they're a lefty. And then that's when the right hand goes back. That's the type of use of the right hand you want to have. And then the finish high with the right side of the V. Your body is going to be sideways. Your left hand's going to be way up in the air. And you're going to have the racket to the right of your hand, the right side of the letter V, because that means you had no wrist. You weren't snapping down on the ball. You simply got below the ball, swung low to high, putting topspin on that ball, and finally hitting amazing backhands. So, Paul, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you trusting me to help you with your tennis game. So you work on these ideas, Paul, and there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. Paul, you got this.